Yokuda is one of the most fascinating places to ever exist in the Elder Scrolls universe, but sadly most of it sunk into the sea during the First Era. Some parts of it still remain, however it's still a mere shell of its former self, with most of its rich culture and societies lost forever. The ancestors of the Red Guards you know today were from Yokuda, and it was their traditions and beliefs which ended up influencing the formation of modern-day Hammerfell. Yokuda is what makes the Red Guards so fascinating. In the description you can find a link to one of our newest and coolest Skyrim builds based around this culture, the Yokudan. In this video, I'm going to be taking you on a journey into a very unique continent and the events which took place here thousands of years before you ever began your adventures in the land of Skyrim. Fact number 1. Yokuda was a massive arid continent found west of Tamriel. The landmass of Yokuda was once bigger than Tamriel, and it was home to more than one race. In fact, one of the races, which I will talk about in another section of the video, formed an empire which was 4 times as large as the Septim Empire. With that knowledge alone, you can realize how large this rocky continent was. However, as mentioned in the introduction, Yokuda has since sunk and now only a few islands remain, and few have travelled there since. You can meet a sailor in Anvil while playing Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion who claims to have visited. Before it sunk, Yokuda was mostly a huge desert, even drier and more scorched than Hammerfell. It was covered in rocky hills and would be viewed by many Tamrielic folks as a barren wasteland. Tremors beneath the continent could also be felt by its inhabitants every so often. Yokuda was made up of a mainland and a whole bunch of different islands, and from reading books in the game you can discover some of the island names, such as Kanesh, Yath, Akos Kazaz, Kamlesh, and Samara. We can also discover the names of important Yokudan places. Totambu was the name of the capital city, located on the largest island, Akos Kazaz. There was a province known as the High Desert, considered to be the home of Frendar Hunding, a legendary Red Guard hero. Hatu Mountain was where he wrote the Book of Circles, and a place simply called the Ark was once a large city founded in the province of Seawind. It was an epic port where the first warrior wave of Yokudans left and ended up in Hammerfell during the First Era, year 808. Fact number 2. Society on Yokuda was very advanced, more so than society in Tamriel. For example, Yokuda had superior navies than those in Tamriel kingdoms. That said, a lot of their tech was better than that found within modern-day Tamrielic provinces. Yokudans had special stones called memory stones, which could actually be used to hold their memories and thoughts. These thoughts could then be recalled later using the stone, and many of these stones ended up in Hammerfell when the Yokudans migrated. Speaking of Hammerfell, this is where the Yokudan advancements and innovations shine. I say this because modern-day Hammerfell still uses many great inventions that the Yokudans brought over thousands of years ago. One such invention is their specific architectural style, which helped the Yokudans defend against the harsh desert climate of their continent. For example, things like flying staircases and ornamental domes were actually built to crumble after an earthquake or an attack. This made them much easier to replace in sections after the fact. Besides architecture and technology, the Yokudans were also highly advanced when it came to agriculture, simply due to the fact they had grown crops and lived well in such an arid land. When they arrived in the deserts of Hammerfell, growing agriculture was a breeze compared to Yokuda, and so their special techniques could be used with great success, and are still used by the Red Guards. The Yokudans also had a special curing process to make their leather extremely durable, even if it was centuries old, and their renowned swords and armor were forged with exceptionally unique but powerful metal crafting techniques. A lot of this knowledge is still kept by the Red Guards in Hammerfell, but it is widely accepted that even though they know much, even more knowledge sunk with Yokuda. Besides all this, the Yokudans used astrology to guide their decision making with great success. They were big believers in the practice of philosophy. Factor number 3. In the Merethic era, the Yokudans were united under an ancient system of government known as the Natutambu, and under this government system they fought a 1,000-year war with the Left-Hand Elves. The Natutambu involved using a council of kings, each who represented their respective nation on the continent of Yokuda. They fought relentlessly against the Left-Handed Elves, and only won with their help from the gods Leki and Diagna. Also known as the Sinistral Mer, these Left-Handed Elves were the race I mentioned earlier who had had a ridiculously large empire. Anyways, once all this passed and Yokuda entered the First Era, the Yokudans actually ended up fighting amongst themselves. Originally, they had become a vast empire ruled by a single emperor. However, eventually the emperor's powers were reduced massively, although they did keep an emperor to be used as a figurehead. The loss of power resulted in many other people seeking it, which led to perpetual civil war between brigands, lords, and even warrior monks. Everyone wanted more land and more power, and warlords known as Yokuda would build large stone castles to protect themselves and their territory. Towns would then start emerging outside these walls, and mini kingdoms were made as a result. Fact number 4, suffering from the civil wars caused the Yokudan people to seek enlightenment, which eventually led to the development of the martial tradition known as sword singing, and then the destruction of their continent. So as the civil wars continued, conflict and battle became an even larger part of Yokudan life. These people were once philosophers, builders, and mystics, were now turning to the sword. Their artistic genius survived through the forging of swords that were both beautiful and powerful, interwoven with magic, of course. The forging of these swords was significant, but mastering your skill with this weapon was even more important. The way of the sword became the life of many Yokudans, and the best sword singers became known as the Ansai. Ansai were the ones that could literally manifest a sword from their own soul, which was known as a spirit sword, or shihai. All sword singers trained to learn this technique, but as you might expect, not all were capable of achieving it. The influence that sword singers had on Yokudan life was so big that even commonplace items would usually have depictions of swords upon them, and the conflicts obviously continued. Yokuda went through many changes of leadership between the 600th and 800th year of the First Era. Many of these leaders had different views on sword singing, and one leader even wanted to restrict swords to sword singers only. Civil wars continued to break out throughout this time period, and one emperor known as Emperor Hira actually tried to exterminate the sword singers. This led to a massive battle known as the War of the Singers, which saw Frandar Hunding's army of sword singers decimate the emperor's forces. Frandar and the sword singers left Yokuda afterwards and went to Hammerfell. Many waves of warriors came to join them afterwards, but only 12 years after the end of the War of the Singers, Yokuda sank down into the sea. The cause of this is debated fiercely, however the popular belief is someone with incredible sword singing abilities caused it to happen. There is a legend that a band of Ansai known as the Hiradirge wanted revenge after losing during the Civil War. The legend then goes on to say that they used powerful stone magic to unleash forbidden sword singing techniques which sunk the continent. The mortal incarnation of the warrior constellation even says that the spirit sword of the first rank Ansai sank Yokuda. The move used is claimed to be called the Pancredo sword. Other legends say that it happened due to natural causes, like severe earthquake, and another says that the Hiradirge did use forbidden techniques, but these techniques angered the entity known as Sakatal, who then emerged from the sea and pulled Yokuda down deep under it. Sakatal is the Yokudan god of everything and is a combination of Anu and Padme. It seems Elder Scrolls lore goes down pretty deep. Fact number 5, while most of Yokuda is under the sea and much of their societal ways have been lost in the process, the legacy of Yokuda and the Yokudan way lives on. The Yokudan pantheon has been kept and worshipped by Red Guards today, and many of the same myths and stories are still taught and respected. In fact, when the Crowns arrived in Hammerfell, one of their main aims was to recreate Yokudan culture in this new environment. They founded a city in which the Alakir named Natutambu, which was not only the name of their old government system, but the name of their old Yokudan capital. Yokudan relics still remain in Hammerfell, and many academic institutes have been set up to study the Yokudan's history, translating their ancient texts for modern reading. Small critters like the assassin beetles, which have been found in Hammerfell, are also said to have originated in Yokuda, but were apparently a lot smaller in the past. Supposedly, they have grown so large due to the fact that the gods wanted to warn the people of Hammerfell not to abandon their worship. In fact, some scholars consider the Yokudans as savage invaders who should not be admired, but this resistance to the Yokudan way is being met with counter-resistance from a vast group of traditionalists who will stop at nothing to keep the Yokudan culture and philosophy alive. And that wraps up one of the most ancient and forgotten places in Elder Scrolls history, Yokuda. Thanks so much for watching the video, and if you did enjoy it, we'd love to know about it in the comments below. You could also add any other facts you want to for other people watching with you. Like the video if you feel it deserves it, and subscribe if you want more videos like this. My name is Scott, social media links are in the description, and I look forward to nerding out with you again very soon.